The dust of Redhaven Port tasted like rust and regret, a fine red powder that coated everything, including the back of Jace Morrow's throat. He squinted against the twin suns setting over the jagged scrapyard horizon, the light glinting off the cracked ferrocrete and twisted plasteel skeletons of long-dead starships. His hideout, a gutted cargo hauler half buried in the debris field, offered little comfort but some measure of concealment. He was tinkering with the busted hydrospanner he used to keep his temperamental sand speeder running. The rhythmic clink of metal on metal, a small defiance against the oppressive silence of the port outskirts. Then came the whine, high-pitched and unnatural, slicing through the quiet. Jace froze, hand tightening on the spanner. He knew that sound. Surveillance. He dropped the tool and moved low and fast, melting into the shadows clinging to the hauler's hull. The drone, a sleek, insectile thing with multiple optic sensors glowing faintly blue, hovered near the jagged opening that served as his window. It wasn't local security. Their drones were clunky, noisy things, relics like everything else in Redhaven. This was off-world tech, expensive, purposeful. Someone was looking specifically for him, or perhaps for something he didn't even know he possessed. He cursed under his breath. Years he'd spent laying low, burying Jace Coyote Morrow. The bank robber who'd vanished after the Centauri heist went sideways, leaving his partner, Garrett Sorn, presumed dead and the loot vaporized, or so everyone thought. He'd chosen Redhaven precisely because nobody cared enough to look closely here. Until now. He crept along the hauler's shadowed side, grabbing a length of heavy chain he kept handy for less subtle problems. The drone pivoted, its sensors sweeping the area. He had maybe one chance. He waited until it drifted slightly lower, its attention focused inside the hauler, then burst from the shadows, swinging the chain in a vicious arc. Metal screamed against metal. The drone spiraled downwards, shedding sparks and pieces of its casing, before smashing into the red dust with a final, pathetic crunch. Jace stood over the wreckage, chest heaving, adrenaline singing in his veins. He kicked at the inert machine. Who sent it? What did they want? Before he could ponder further, a voice, smooth as synth silk but laced with undeniable tension, spoke from behind him. Impressive. For a primitive. Jace spun, chain held defensively, heart hammering against his ribs. Standing near the crumpled rear hatch of his hauler was a woman, or something remarkably like one. She was tall, impossibly graceful, even standing amidst the junk, with skin the color of twilight, a deep, mesmerizing violet. Her hair was a cascade of silver, catching the dying light like spun moonlight. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed with a faint inner luminescence, the irises a startling shade of amethyst. She wore a form-fitting, utilitarian jumpsuit of a dark gray material he didn't recognize, scuffed and torn in places, hinting at a rough journey. In one hand, she held a sleek, sophisticated pistol aimed squarely at his chest. Her other hand rested near a complex-looking device strapped to her thigh. "Who the hell are you?" Jace growled, keeping the chain ready. His eyes darted around, checking for accomplices. He saw none, just her, the setting suns, and the endless expanse of junk. "My designation is Lyra. I am an advanced synthetic companion unit," she stated, her voice perfectly modulated, yet lacking the flat effect he associated with androids. There was a subtle tremor beneath the calm surface, a hint of something tightly controlled. "That drone was tracking me, not you. You simply complicated its objective by destroying it," Jace snorted, disbelief warring with caution. "A synthetic companion unit wandering the ass end of nowhere, armed like a mercenary. Right. And I'm the Galactic Emperor. What do you want?" Assistance, Lyra said, her gaze unwavering. There is an energy surge signature nearby, consistent with dormant portal technology. Ancient. Pre-Federation. My transport was damaged during atmospheric entry. That portal is my only means of leaving this planet. The drone was merely the first wave. More will follow. They are hunting me. Jace stared at her. Portal tech. That was myth. Stuff of spacers' drunken tales. Old derelict energy conduits crisscrossed Redhaven, remnants of its brief colonial boom centuries ago. But functioning portals. Unlikely. Still, she seemed convinced. And desperate. And you think I can just wave a hydrospanner and fire up some mythical space gate? My scans indicate residual power fluctuations and compatible energy matrix configurations within that structure. She gestured with her chin towards a hulking, half-collapsed relay station about a click deeper into the scrapyard. My internal repair diagnostics are insufficient for the damage sustained. Your demonstrated aptitude for percussive maintenance suggests a familiarity with salvaging and repurposing technology. You will help me reactivate it. It wasn't a request. Or what? Jace challenged, shifting his weight. You'll shoot me. Then who fixes your magic door? A flicker of something unreadable crossed her violet features. Necessity dictates certain actions. I can interface with basic machinery to initiate rudimentary repairs. But the core sequencing requires manual calibration beyond my current capabilities. Your assistance increases the probability of success significantly. Failure means capture. For me, that is a fate worse than deactivation. For you, her eyes flicked towards the wrecked drone. It likely means interrogation by forces who do not value primitive life. He hated that she had a point. Whoever sent that drone wouldn't be pleased about its destruction, and they wouldn't care about collateral damage. Redhaven was a place where people disappeared without a trace. Let's say I believe this portal nonsense. What's in it for me? Besides not getting shot by you or interrogated by your friends. Safe passage off this planet, she replied immediately. Once the portal is active, it can be calibrated for multiple destinations within its operational range. I will ensure your coordinates are included. Escape. The word resonated deep within him. He'd been stuck in this dust bowl for 5 long years, always looking over his shoulder. The dream of a clean slate fading with each sunrise. This was insane. An alien-looking android, mythical portals, off-world hunters. But it was also a chance, maybe the only one he'd ever get. He studied her again. The way she held the gun, steady but not aggressive. The faint sheen of moisture on her upper lip, despite the dry heat. The almost imperceptible tensing of her shoulders. Synthetics didn't sweat. They didn't show tension like that. All right, Lyra, Jace said slowly, lowering the chain but not dropping it. Show me this portal, but try anything funny, and synthetic or not. You'll find out primitives can be surprisingly effective. She nodded, a curt, efficient movement, and holstered her weapon. Follow me, and stay alert. My pursuers employ advanced tracking methods. As they move through the deepening twilight, picking their way through canyons of compacted scrap and rust-streaked machinery. Jace watched her. She moved with a fluid grace that was captivating. Yet there was an underlying weariness in her posture. She navigated the treacherous terrain surely, her luminous eyes scanning the surroundings constantly. He noticed the way she instinctively flinched when a loose sheet of metal clattered nearby, the way her breathing hitched slightly when they had to squeeze through a narrow gap. Small things. Human things, or at least organic things. The relay station loomed ahead, a brutalist concrete structure slumped like a dying beast. Its communication towers snapped off jaggedly. Vines of unknown origin snaked across its stained surface. The air here felt different, charged with a low hum that vibrated through the soles of his boots. Lyra stopped before a massive, blast-shielded door, fused shut by time and neglect. The primary energy conduit runs beneath this point, she said, kneeling and running a delicate violet hand over the pitted metal. A faint blue light scanned from her fingertips. The access controls are offline, likely fried by environmental decay or power surges. We need to bypass them and reach the primary ignition chamber. Bypass how? Jace asked, eyeing the meter-thick door. Got a plasma cutter in that utility belt. Negative, she replied, standing up. But residual energy signatures suggest the internal mechanisms might respond to a direct power feed, if properly modulated. There should be an auxiliary maintenance conduit nearby. She scanned the area again, her eyes narrowing in concentration. There, approximately 20 meters north-northwest, concealed beneath that pile of filtration units. Jace followed her gaze. It looked like just another heap of junk. He sighed. All right, let's see if we can jumpstart your escape route. They spent the next hour digging through the debris, Jace using his muscle and salvaged pry bars, Lyra employing smaller, more precise tools extracted from compartments on her suit. She worked with a focused intensity, her movements economical and skilled. He found the conduit access panel, a heavy Durasteel plate bolted into the rockcrete foundation. The bolts were fused solid with rust. Need to cut these, Jace grunted, wiping sweat from his brow. The red dust was already turning to mud on his skin. Lyra produced a small, cylindrical device from her thigh pack. Focused sonic disruptor. Limited charge, but it should suffice. She aimed it at the bolts, and a high-frequency whine filled the air, almost unbearable. The metal around the bolts glowed cherry red, then seemed to liquefy, dripping away. Jace used the pry bar, and the heavy panel groaned open, revealing a dark shaft descending into the earth, filled with thick cables and conduits coated in grime. Power coupling should be down there, Lyra said, peering into the darkness. We need to splice in a compatible power source to trigger the door release sequence. And where do we get a compatible power source out here? Jace asked, already guessing the answer. Lyra looked towards his hideout, barely visible in the distance. Your speeder's energy cell. It should provide sufficient amperage if we bypass the regulators. He swore under his breath. Dragging the heavy power cell half a click through the junkyard wasn't his idea of fun. Fine. But you owe me a new cell. If we escape this planet, consider it paid, she replied without inflection. The journey back to the hauler and then lugging the bulky energy cell to the relay station was exhausting. The twin moons had risen, casting long, eerie shadows across the landscape. The silence felt heavier now, pregnant with unseen threats. Jace couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. As they worked to connect the power cell to the conduit cables, using tools Jace scavenged and Lyra's surprisingly adept technical skills, he decided to push her. So, advanced synthetic companion unit, he said, stripping insulation from a thick cable. What kind of companion carries a military-grade sidearm and knows how to use sonic disruptors? Lyra didn't look up from the delicate connections she was making. My designated function involves providing security and technical support in hazardous environments for my owner. Owner, Jace repeated skeptically. Who owns a high-spec android like you and then just loses her on a backwater dump like Redhaven? She hesitated for a fraction of a second, her fingers faltering on a wire. My transport encountered unforeseen navigational difficulties. An ion storm. Ion storms don't usually involve pursuit drones, Jace countered, watching her closely. He saw it again, that flicker of emotion. quickly suppressed. Her violet skin seemed to flush slightly in the dim light filtering down the shaft. And then there was the scent. Faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. A subtle, exotic fragrance that seemed to emanate from her. Something floral and spicy that inexplicably tugged at his senses. No machine smelled like that. No machine flushed, or hesitated, or had eyes that held such depth, such weariness. "Who are you really?" "Lyra," he asked, his voice softer but firm. "What are you running from?" She finally looked up, her amethyst eyes meeting his. The carefully constructed facade seemed to waver. "My designation is Lyra, that is truth. But I am not synthetic." She took a shallow breath. "I am Zereni." Jace stared. Zyrene. He'd heard the name whispered in shadowy corners of spaceports, spoken of in hushed tones. A rare, elusive species from a system lost beyond the outer rim territories, rumored to possess empathic or emotional manipulation abilities, rumored to be incredibly beautiful, rumored to be slaves, highly prized commodities among the galaxy's decadent elite. Zereni, he breathed. "They said your kind were wiped out, or enslaved. Not all," Lyra said, her voice low, tinged with bitterness. "My people possess certain sensitivities, abilities that make us desirable to those who collect unique possessions. I was contracted, an arranged political alliance, sealed by my transfer to Minister Vexus of the Cygnus Combine. Minister Vexus, a powerful, ruthless politician known for his exotic tastes and iron grip on several lucrative trade sectors. Owning a Zereni would be the ultimate status symbol for someone like him. Contracted." Jace scoffed. "Sounds like a fancy word for slavery." "It is," she confirmed, her gaze dropping back to her work, but her hands were trembling slightly now. "I was intended as a gift, a bride, to seal a pact between Vexus and my world's ruling council, who sought protection under his banner. I refused the arrangement. I fled before the transfer ceremony. So Vexus sent hunters after his runaway prize," Jace concluded. It all clicked into place. The advanced drone, her desperation, the high-tech gear. She wasn't just running, she was fleeing a life of gilded captivity. "These abilities, what can you do?" Lyra paused, considering her words. "We can sense and subtly influence emotional states. Pheromonal projection. Bioresonant frequency manipulation. In high concentrations, it can be persuasive or disorienting. It is why we were coveted and why we are feared." She touched the device on her thigh. "This baton helps focus and amplify my natural abilities, but its power is limited." He looked at her differently now. Not as a machine, not even just as a woman, but as a survivor carrying a dangerous legacy. The faint scent he'd detected earlier, her pheromones. Had she been subconsciously influencing him, keeping him calm, making him more agreeable? The thought was unsettling. But looking at the vulnerability beneath her controlled exterior, he didn't feel manipulated, just aware of the faint pull, the unusual resonance between them. "All right, Zereni," he said, turning back to the heavy cable. "Let's get this portal open. Sounds like you need it more than I do." Though the thought of escaping Redhaven, escaping his own past, burned brighter than ever. They finished splicing the cables from the speeder's power cell into the station's ancient conduit. Lyra checked the connections with her scanner, her brow furrowed in concentration. The power flow is stable, but the primary ignition sequence requires precise energy modulation. There's severe degradation in the control circuits. "Meaning what?" Jace asked, wiping grease from his hands. "Meaning we have to initiate the sequence manually from the control room inside," she said. looking back at the sealed blast door. Connecting the power should trigger the emergency door release, but the internal systems will need direct interface. Great, Jace muttered, more crawling around in the dark. Lyra activated the final connection. Power surged through the ancient cables with a deep groan. Lights flickered erratically deep within the access shaft. Above them, the massive blast door shuddered, groaned, and then, with agonizing slowness, began to retract upwards, grinding against decades of corrosion. A dark, cavernous space opened before them, smelling of ozone, decay, and something else. A faint, thrumming energy. Stay sharp, Jace warned, pulling his own trusty, if somewhat outdated, slug-thrower pistol from his belt. No telling what's been nesting in here. Lyra drew her sleeker energy pistol again, her luminous eyes adapting quickly to the gloom. They stepped inside. The air was thick with dust motes dancing in the beams of their utility lights. Vast, shadowy machinery filled the space, conduits thick as pythons snaking across the floor and ceiling. In the center of the chamber, partially obscured by collapsed gantries and debris, stood a massive ring-like structure embedded in the floor, the portal emitter. It was dark, silent. The control room should be on the upper level, Lyra murmured, pointing towards a rusted catwalk clinging precariously to the far wall. They made their way carefully across the debris-strewn floor. The thrumming sensation intensified. A subsonic vibration felt more in the bones than heard. Suddenly, Lyra froze, holding up a hand. Movement, upper level, multiple signatures. Jace cursed. Trackers. They must have detected the power surge. How many? 3. No, 4, she whispered, her eyes scanning the shadowed catwalk above. Heavily armed. They're converging on the control room access. Can we beat them there? Jace asked, his grip tightening on his pistol. Unlikely. They have tactical positioning. Lyra glanced at the portal emitter, then back at the catwalk. A desperate resolve hardened her features. There's another way. A secondary maintenance tunnel behind the emitter array. It should lead to the conduit junction beneath the control room. We can bypass them. Maybe override the main console from there. Sounds risky, Jace said, and potentially explosive if we mess with the power feeds directly. Less risky than facing 4 elite trackers in a confined space. Lyra countered. Vexus spares no expense. His retrieval teams are ruthless. He nodded grimly. All right, lead the way. They circled around the dormant portal, finding a low, corroded hatch hidden behind a bank of scorched capacitors. Lyra worked the manual release, her slender fingers surprisingly strong. It opened onto a cramped, dark tunnel filled with wiring bundles and coolant pipes. They squeezed inside, Jace pulling the hatch closed behind them. The tunnel was claustrophobic, smelling strongly of stale coolant and decay. They moved single file, Lyra navigating by the faint glow of her scanner. Above them, they could hear the faint clang of boots on the metal catwalk. Their pursuers were close. The tunnel sloped downwards, ending at a junction box crackling with faint blue sparks. Wires snaked out in all directions. This is it, Lyra whispered, examining the complex interface panel on the box. The primary power feeds and data relays for the control room run through here. If I can splice in my data tool. She pulled a slim, metallic device from her belt and began carefully connecting it to specific ports on the panel. Lines of complex code scrolled rapidly across the device's small screen. How long? Jace urged, listening intently to the sounds above. The footsteps seemed to have stopped, directly over the control room area. The encryption is archaic, but layered, complex security protocols, even in decay, Lyra murmured, her fingers flying across the interface. Almost there. Bypassing sequence lock. accessing primary ignition matrix. Suddenly, the junction box flared brightly, showering the tunnel with sparks. An alarm klaxon began to blare from the main chamber above, deafeningly loud. Compromised, Lyra hissed, pulling back her tool as smoke poured from the panel. They detected the intrusion attempt. Secondary firewall triggered a system alert. Heavy footsteps pounded on the catwalk above. Moving quickly now. Shouted commands echoed down, muffled but urgent. Plan B, Jace said grimly. We fight our way out. No, Lyra said, her eyes fixed on her scanner. They're splitting up, 2 heading for the main entrance, 2 coming down the primary access shaft towards this tunnel. We need to activate the portal. Now. But you said the console. There's a manual emergency override. Directly at the emitter array. High risk of energy feedback. Unstable vortex formation. But it's our only chance. She grabbed his arm, her violet eyes intense. We have to move. Fast. They scrambled back through the cramped tunnel, bursting out from the hatch, just as 2 figures in sleek black armor rappelled down from the catwalk near the control room entrance. Weapons ready, laser bolts sizzled past Jace's head, impacting the machinery behind him with explosive force. Go, he yelled, shoving Lyra towards the massive portal ring. He laid down covering fire with his slug thrower, the heavy slugs punching satisfying holes in the metalwork near the descending trackers, forcing them to take cover. Lyra sprinted across the open floor, dodging debris, heading for a control pedestal near the edge of the ring. Another tracker appeared at the main blast door entrance, opening fire with a repeating plasma rifle. Jace ducked behind a thick support pillar as superheated bolts splashed against its surface. He was pinned down. Lyra reached the pedestal, frantically working the controls. Sparks flew from the panel as she bypassed safety lockouts. Almost there, she shouted over the din of weapons fire and alarms. Energy matrix charging. A deep hum started to emanate from the portal ring, growing rapidly in intensity. The air crackled. The metal structure began to glow with an ethereal blue light. Jace risked a glance. The center of the ring was no longer dark, it shimmered, distorting the view of the chamber wall behind it like heat haze over asphalt. It's unstable, Lyra yelled, shielding her eyes from the increasing brightness. I can't regulate the power flow from here. One of the trackers from the catwalk dropped to the floor, landing silently, and charged towards Lyra, firing his laser pistol. Jace saw the danger. No time to aim carefully. He fired his slug thrower from the hip. The heavy round caught the tracker in the shoulder, spinning him around. He stumbled but didn't fall, raising his pistol again. Before he could fire, Lyra whirled around, thrusting the Zereni baton from her thigh rig towards him. A wave of shimmering, purple energy pulsed from the device. The tracker stopped dead, dropping his weapon, his hands flying to his head as if in agony. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious or worse. Jace used the distraction to break, cover, firing rapidly at the remaining tracker near the entrance, forcing him back outside the blast doors. The 2 repelling trackers were advancing again, firing methodically. Jace's pistol clicked empty. He hurled the useless weapon at one of them and dove behind another piece of heavy machinery. Lyra, now, he roared. The portal flared, the shimmering center resolving into a swirling vortex of blues and purples, spitting arcs of raw energy. The entire chamber vibrated violently. Loose debris rained down from the ceiling. The coordinates are locked, Lyra screamed back, staggering away from the overloaded control pedestal. Redhaven exit vector confirmed, but the field integrity is critical. It could collapse any second. The 2 trackers were closing in, weapons raised. Jace scrambled for anything to use as a weapon, his eyes landing on the heavy chain he'd used on the drone, still looped through his belt. Suddenly, a familiar, gravelly voice boomed from the main entrance, cutting through the chaos. Need a hand? Coyote. Jace looked up, stunned. Standing framed in the doorway, backlit by the twin moons, was Grim, the grizzled bartender from the Rusted Fang, the local watering hole where Jace occasionally drowned his sorrows. Grim wasn't just a bartender, though. Ex-colonial marine. Rumor had it. He was built like a cargo lifter, his face a roadmap of old scars, and one arm was obviously cybernetic, gleaming dully in the portal's light. He held a massive, military-grade pulse cannon like it weighed nothing. Grim. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jace yelled, bewildered. "Heard the fireworks," Grim shouted back, unleashing a torrent of energy pulses from the cannon. The two advancing trackers were blown off their feet, armor sparking and smoking. The one Jace had driven back outside the entrance didn't reappear. "Figured you might be in over your head." "Again." "The portal," Lyra urged, grabbing Jace's arm. "We have to go now." Jace hesitated, looking at Grim. "Come with us, old man. Get out of this dump." Grim grinned, a scary sight with his scarred face and cybernetic jaw. "Someone's got to watch the bar. Besides," he hefted the pulse cannon. "Looks like the neighborhood watch needs an upgrade." He fired another volley towards the incapacitated trackers. "Go. Get gone." Jace nodded, gratitude and relief washing over him. He turned to Lyra. "Let's move." They ran towards the swirling, unstable vortex. The energy washing off it was immense, raising the hairs on his arms. It felt like stepping into a hurricane. Just as they reached the edge, a new voice echoed through the chamber, cold and dripping with malice. A voice Jace hadn't heard in 5 years. A voice he thought long silenced by betrayal and blaster fire, going somewhere. Jace. Jace froze, turning slowly. Standing near the wreckage of the control pedestal, flanked by 2 more figures in dark, form-fitting armor, Vexus reinforcements. Likely was Garrett Sorn, his former partner, the man he'd trusted implicitly, the man who had sold him out during the Centauri heist, leaving Jace for dead while trying to make off with the entire score. Sorn looked older, harder. A nasty scar traced a path from his temple down his cheek, a souvenir Jace hadn't given him. He wore expensive clothes beneath a tactical vest, and his eyes burned with cold hatred. "Garrett," Jace breathed, disbelief warring with a surge of pure fury. "You're alive!" Surprised, Sorn sneered, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Took more than leaving me gutted in a ventilation shaft to finish me. Took Minister Vexus's resources to put me back together, better than before." He gestured towards Lyra, who had instinctively moved behind Jace. "The minister wants his property returned, and his smile widened. "I want overdue compensation, starting with your head, Jace." The 2 guards with Sorn raised sophisticated pulse rifles, aiming directly at Jace and Lyra. Grim was too far away, occupied with keeping the downed trackers down. The portal behind them crackled ominously, threatening to collapse. They were trapped. Vexus picked the wrong dog to hunt his runaway toy. "Garrett," Jace said, stalling for time, his mind racing. He looked at the unstable portal, then at Sorn's smug face. An insane idea sparked in his mind. A coyote's gamble. "You always were greedy, just practical," Sorn retorted. "Hand over the Zarini, Jace. Maybe I'll make your death quick." "She's not property," Jace growled. He subtly shifted his weight, positioning himself between Lyra and Sorn, angling slightly towards the portal controls Lyra had abandoned. "And you work for Vexus now, running errands for the man who probably bankrolled the operation you betrayed me on." Sorn's eyes narrowed. "Vexus pays well. Loyalty is a commodity." "Jace," Something you never understood. Oh, I understand it, Jace said, his voice dangerously soft. He glanced meaningfully at the portal's shimmering, unstable vortex. I understand that vortex integrity is failing. See those energy spikes. One more power surge, and this whole place could go up. Or maybe. He locked eyes with Sorn. It just gets a little selective. He subtly nudged a damaged conduit near his foot with his boot, one that Lyra had bypassed earlier, causing a shower of sparks. The portal behind him flickered violently, spitting a raw bolt of energy that vaporized a chunk of nearby machinery. Sorn and his guards flinched back. "What are you talking about?" Sorn demanded, suspicion dawning in his eyes. "This old tech," Jace bluffed, praying the ancient damage system was unpredictable enough to sell it. It's keyed into local energy signatures. Always was a failsafe against off-world intrusions. Like, say, a ship trying to lock onto coordinates from orbit. He nodded towards the ceiling. "Your ride home, Garrett. Is it waiting upstairs?" Sorn hesitated, glancing upwards instinctively. Jace saw the flicker of uncertainty. Vexus would have provided Sorn with transport, likely cloaked nearby. "You're bluffing," Sorn snarled. But the confidence in his voice had wavered. "Am I?" Jace countered, keeping his gaze steady. "This portal isn't just a doorway, Garrett. It's a weapon, linked to the entire planetary grid. I overload the matrix now." He took a deliberate step towards the sparking pedestal Lyra had used. "And any active energy signature within local space gets pulled into the vortex. Shredded. Your ship. Your backup." Vexus's orbital yacht, if he's feeling particularly hands-on. He reached the pedestal, placing his hand near the controls, still sparking from Lyra's override. "Last chance. Garrett. Walk away, or we all find out just how selective this old weapon can be." Lyra watched him, her eyes wide, understanding the desperate gamble. The portal pulsed again, the vortex swirling with chaotic energy. Sorn stared at Jace, then at the portal, then back at Jace. Greed warred with self-preservation in his eyes. The lives of his guards meant nothing, but his own ship, his escape. "You wouldn't," Sorn breathed. But the threat, however fabricated, had struck a nerve. An unstable, ancient portal weapon linked to the planetary grid was just plausible enough to be terrifying. "Try me," Jace said softly, pressing his hand closer to the sparking controls. For a tense moment, nobody moved. The only sounds were the hum of the portal, the crackle of dying electronics, and the distant whine of Redhaven's perpetual wind. Then, Sorn made his decision. He subtly signaled his guards, "Fall back." Slowly, he kept his eyes locked on Jace, backing away towards the main entrance where Grimm stood, pulse cannon still ready. "This isn't over, Jace. Vexus will have her, and I will have my revenge." "Get in line," Jace retorted, not relaxing his stance until Sorn and his men had fully retreated out of the blast doors and into the red dust night. He listened until the sound of their hurried footsteps faded. Only then did he slump, slightly, the adrenaline rush leaving him shaky. "That was," Lyra started, her voice filled with disbelief. "Insane," Jace finished, running a hand through his dusty hair. "But it worked. Come on, before it collapses for real." He grabbed her hand, pulling her towards the swirling vortex. Grimm gave them a final, grim salute from the doorway. They didn't look back. Plunging into the portal felt like being torn apart and reassembled simultaneously. A dizzying kaleidoscope of light and pressure. Then blackness. When awareness returned, it was gradual. Cool. Recycled air replaced the dusty ozone of the relay station. Soft lighting replaced the harsh emergency strobes. Jace found himself lying on a smooth, metallic floor, Lyra beside him, both gasping for breath. They weren't in Redhaven anymore. They were in a clean, utilitarian corridor, unmistakably the interior of a starship, an old one, judging by the design, but functional. Report. A gruff voice crackled over an intercom. Portal activation confirmed. Exit signature stabilized. Did they make it? Jace pushed himself up, helping Lyra. Standing a few meters down the corridor, leaning against the bulkhead, was Grim. He had a data pad in his hand and the pulse cannon slung over his shoulder. He grinned at their bewildered expressions. Told you someone had to watch the bar, Grim said, tapping the data pad. Also helps to have remote access to certain antiquities, like pre-Federation transit hubs and the occasional decommissioned freighter parked in high orbit. You, Jace managed, shaking his head. You planned this. The portal. Let's just say I keep tabs on interesting energy signatures, Grim deflected. And I owed you one, Coyote, for that little incident on Kepler Prime. Figured safe passage off Redhaven might clear the debt. He nodded towards Lyra. Looks like you picked up a stray. High-value one. Judging by the welcoming committee, Lyra inclined her head gracefully. We are indebted to you, Grim. Just pay your tab next time you're planetside. Grim grunted. Ship's called the Rusty Bucket. Appropriate. Not much. But she's jump capable and doesn't attract attention. We're heading rimward, towards the free territories. Should be able to lose any pursuit there. As the Rusty Bucket slipped into hyperspace, leaving the dust and danger of Redhaven far behind, Jace looked at Lyra. The immediate threat was gone, but Sorn was still out there. Vexus was still out there. Her fight wasn't over. And maybe, just maybe, neither was his. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but also a flicker of hope. He felt an echo of it within himself. So, he said, leaning back against the cool metal wall of the freighter's cargo hold, which Grim had designated their temporary quarters. Minister Vexus, Garrett Sorn, you've made some powerful enemies. Lyra sat opposite him on a crate, pulling her knees up to her chest. They represent a power structure that thrives on control and exploitation, not just of my people, but of anyone they deem lesser. She looked at him, her amethyst eyes searching his face. You understand that kind of fight, don't you, Jace Morrow? He thought of his own past, the choices that had led him to Redhaven, running from the consequences of his actions, running from a system he felt had chewed him up and spat him out. Maybe, he admitted. Running only gets you so far. Indeed, Lyra murmured. At some point, you have to turn and face what hunts you, or build something strong enough to shield you. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled only by the low thrum of the freighter's engines. The faint, exotic scent of her pheromones seemed less unsettling now, more like a subtle signature of her unique presence. He didn't feel manipulated, just connected. A strange sort of kinship forged in the heart of danger. He looked at her violet skin, her silver hair, her luminous eyes that held ancient sorrows and newfound determination. She was beautiful, yes. But she was also resilient, intelligent, and fiercely brave. Far more than just a runaway prize. She was a force. So, what now? Zyrene, he asked quietly. Lyra met his gaze, a faint smile touching her lips. Now, we survive. We adapt, and perhaps, her smile widened slightly, holding a hint of hidden strength. We find others like me. We build that shield. Jace found himself smiling back. The prospect of taking on a powerful minister and a vengeful ex-partner seemed slightly less insane now. Maybe because he wouldn't be doing it alone. All right, Lyra, he said, echoing his earlier words. but with entirely different meaning. Let's see what we can build. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but for the first time in years, Jace felt something other than the urge to run. He felt a purpose. And looking at the violet-skinned woman beside him, he realized escaping Redhaven wasn't just an escape from his past. It was the beginning of a future he hadn't dared to imagine. 10 years, a decade can change a man, a woman, even the course of whispered rebellions in the dark corners of the galaxy. The rusty bucket was long retired, replaced by sleeker, faster ships bearing the insignia of Coyote Systems, a security firm renowned across 3 sectors for its discretion, innovative technology, and an uncanny success rate in extracting clients from impossible situations. Jace Morrow, the disgraced ex-robber, was now CEO Jace Morrow, a respected, if somewhat enigmatic, figure in interstellar commerce. His past as the Cosmic Coyote was a legend whispered by smugglers and bounty hunters, a life he kept carefully compartmentalized from his polished corporate persona. Beside him, Lyra was no longer the desperate fugitive. She was his partner, in business and in life. Publicly, she was the brilliant chief technology officer of Coyote Systems, the mind behind their cutting-edge cloaking tech and security algorithms. Her Zyrani heritage carefully concealed behind expertly crafted biodampeners and carefully managed public appearances. Privately, she was the heart of their true operation, the Zyrani Liberation Network, an underground railroad that had, over the past 10 years, covertly freed thousands of her people from servitude across the galaxy, spiriting them away to hidden sanctuaries or integrating them into sympathetic societies. Minister Vexus was still a powerful figure, but his influence had waned slightly, hampered by costly, fruitless searches for his lost prize and the nagging, untraceable disruptions to his more illicit operations, disruptions orchestrated by Coyote Systems under the guise of corporate espionage or security contracts. Garrett Sorn had vanished after the Redhaven incident, presumed dead or simply gone to ground, though Jace never truly believed he was gone for good. Tonight, Jace and Lyra moved through the glittering throngs of the Galactic Trade Summit Gala on Xylos Prime. He, in tailored evening wear that still felt vaguely uncomfortable. She, stunning in a gown of shimmering dark blue fabric that subtly shifted color, her silver hair swept up elegantly, her violet skin muted to a softer lavender by the dampeners. They exchanged pleasantries with diplomats, traded veiled threats with corporate rivals, and gathered intelligence, all while appearing to be nothing more than a power couple enjoying the festivities. Minister Kalen is sweating more than usual, Lyra murmured into Jace's ear as they danced, her voice masked by the orchestral music. Our security consultation regarding his spice smuggling routes seems to have ruffled his composure. Jace grinned, spinning her gracefully. Good. Means the data packet we lifted from his aide's comm unit is incriminating. Should be enough leverage to ensure safe passage for the transport leaving Cygnus Beta next week. 20 Zyrani families on that ship. Excellent. Lyra smiled, a genuine warmth reaching her eyes. Their connection, forged in the dust of Redhaven, had deepened into a profound bond, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared danger, and a love that defied categorization. It was in the quiet moments aboard their ship, the Starlight Drifter, watching the nebula clouds drift past the viewport. It was in the shared smiles when their children, 8-year-old Nova, with her father's clever eyes and her mother's latent empathic sense, and 6-year-old Reese, already showing an unnerving aptitude for bypassing security locks, outsmarted their training protocols. Later, standing on a balcony overlooking the glittering cityscape of Xylos Prime, the alien moonlight casting long shadows, Lyra leaned against Jace, The biodampeners were deactivated now. The subtle, familiar scent of her pheromones a comforting presence. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. The simplicity of just running, surviving. Jace looked out at the sprawling city, a symbol of the complex web of power and intrigue they navigated daily. He thought of the faces of the Zereni they'd freed, the hope in their eyes. He thought of Nova and Reese, sleeping safely on the Starlight Drifter, under Grimm's watchful, cybernetic eye, the old Marine having finally retired from the bar business to become their head of security and unofficial grandfather. Sometimes, he admitted. But this, he gestured encompassing their life, their mission. This is better. We aren't just running anymore, Lyra. We're building something, something that lasts. The cosmic coyote and his violet star, Lyra murmured, repeating the moniker whispered about them in the underworld. Freedom fighters hiding behind fame and fortune. Sounds about right, Jace chuckled, wrapping an arm around her. Vexus is losing ground. Our network grows stronger every cycle. We're making a difference. There are always more people to save. Lyra reminded him gently, her Zereni empathy sensing the undercurrent of weariness beneath his resolve. "And we'll save them," Jace affirmed, meeting her gaze. "Together." The fight wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be entirely. There would always be tyrants like Vexus, betrayers like Sorn potentially lurking in the shadows, systems built on oppression. But Jace and Lyra had found their peace, not in stagnation, but in shared purpose. They had built a shield, not just for themselves, but for countless others. They had turned desperation into defiance, survival into a thriving legacy of freedom, and somewhere, on the dusty fringes of the galaxy, perhaps even back on Redhaven Port, if you knew where to look, there might still be a bar called the Rusted Fang. And if you were desperate, hunted, looking for a way out, you might walk in, slide onto a worn stool, and order the Coyote Special. You wouldn't get a fancy cocktail. But if you were lucky, if your need was genuine, the grizzled, cybernetically enhanced bartender might just slide a data chip across the counter instead. A chip containing coordinates.contacts.a lifeline. A portal, not of unstable energy, but of hope. A chance at a new life, courtesy of the coyote and his star, still fighting their fight from the shadows, ensuring that escape was always possible. For those who dared to seek it, their ending wasn't just happy, it was a continuation. A promise whispered across the star lanes, freedom is worth fighting for. And sometimes, the most effective weapons are hope, intelligence, and a love forged in the heart of the cosmic dust.